Valentine's Day, everyone, and welcome back to Yard to Table. In today's episode, I am going to give you the absolute best cinnamon bun recipe that I have ever had in my life. I'm not gonna lie, I had about almost 3 cinnamon buns when I first tried this recipe, and I've had FOMO ever since. FOMO is fear of missing out. So, in today's episode, with it being Valentine's Day, I thought it would be really sweet if I were to drop off some cinnamon buns at my kids' school for all of the staff there, because they all work so hard, and as a thank you for it being Valentine's Day, I've got my red shirt on and we are gonna be making these amazing cinnamon buns. I've got the recipe linked down for you guys below so you can follow along, and we're gonna get started. So first thing that we're gonna do is we are gonna start off with the dough. So I've got a note from my friend, and this is her mom's recipe. So thank you to Stephanie and her mom for sending me this recipe over. So first of all, I need to, I've got a drizzle. Okay, so first I've only ever made this recipe once before, so this is the second time that I'm making this recipe, and I'm excited. I'm gonna reserve 2 of the cinnamon buns for my family, and I'm doubling this recipe because there's a lot of teachers at my kids' school and staff and support staff and everything. So I want to double this recipe so that if anything, if 24 isn't enough, some of them can split them in half and go nuts with them and enjoy them. And I'm not going to be putting icing on them, I don't think. I still have to figure that out, because technically at the end of this recipe, what you need to do is you're supposed to flip it over and then peel them off so that all of your cinnamon buns are laid out on either a wooden cutting board or something. But just for transportation wise, I'm gonna leave the cinnamon buns in here, and then I can just get this back, and I'll leave the icing off to the side, so then the support staff can just drizzle whatever kind of icing and the amount that they want on top. Each recipe makes 12 cinnamon buns. Now, it also depends on how huge you make these cinnamon buns. Obviously, you can make them more narrow and you can get 24 out of them, but I'm just going for 12 nicely sized, typical sized cinnamon buns. All right, so first thing I need to do is I need to get my dough started, because I've got to leave it over at the gas fireplace just to kind of let them rise a little bit, and we tend to keep the house on the cooler side when the kids go to school. First things first, we need to make the dough. All right, I need a beaten egg. All right, we've got to melt some butter. So 4 tablespoons of butter and water, and I've got my bread flour here. And these are all the things that we need. So basically for the dough, I need milk. Now this is our pumpkin seed milk that we make for free. And we've been making this since November 7th. And I had it written down on my calendar when we started making this, because I wanted to see how far 76 pumpkins worth of seeds would last us. So we're still going strong with the pumpkin seeds, and so the milk in this recipe is going to be made out of the pumpkin seed milk. So I am using butter in this recipe, but if you're vegan, I don't know what the replacement for butter would be. I guess oil. Yeah, so oil. And then for the egg, I've actually got, I used it this morning. I use this egg replacer sometimes when I don't have eggs. I did end up buying eggs, but if you're looking for an egg replacer, I've got this stuff from Bob's Red Mills, and it's actually really good. I used it in our pancakes this morning, and I use it in baking and other stuff. So if you're wanting to make this recipe vegan, you easily can. Swap out the butter for oil, and you can, cream cheese, you could use vegan cream cheese. That wouldn't be an issue. And then the only other thing would be egg. So I've got this egg replacer, and the ingredients for this, it's nothing scary. It's potato starch, tapioca flour, baking soda, and psyllium husk fiber. I use psyllium husk in my crackers all the time. It's super light as far as weight goes, and it's crazy fibrous. It's something like 200 and something percent when I read the label at the Bulk Barn. So that's all this is, and it's 1 tablespoon of this stuff, 2 tablespoons of water, You mix it with a fork, you let it sit aside. It says for a minute. I do about maybe 20-30 seconds so it gets nice and thick. And then it's kind of pudding consistency, and then you can throw that in. So it's really, really easy to make this recipe vegan if you want to go that route. But today I'm just gonna use an actual egg, and we're gonna get started. So this is a bread-ish type dough that we're gonna be making. So I am gonna be warming up the milk and the sugar just to kind of liven up the yeast a little bit and to kind of get things going. And anytime my husband makes milk for us, he always does 2 jars. And these are the 1.9 liter jars, so that one's already gone. And we go through about these, oh God, with making bread, extra baking like I'm doing today. What else do I use it for? Oh, bread, cereal, coffee. Like, we go through a lot of milk. He always makes 2 at a time. And it lasts us about 2 to 2.5 days. All right, so we need that. And I need 4 tablespoons of melted butter. All right, so I'm gonna go with the depth of a tablespoon, which is maybe my thumbnail's width. And I'm gonna go down, and I figure this is about 4 tablespoons each. So I need, how many of these? I'm doubling it. Okay, so I need 8. Ooh. All right, so there's melted butter, and then 2 cups of milk. All right, and what else? 4 tablespoons of water, so I need 8 tablespoons of water. So I need 8, 2, 3. All right, let's go heat this up. While that is heating, now, do you have to heat it? Not really. It always helps to liven up your yeast if you warm up the milk and what you're putting it into, that much faster. In this mug, I've just shaved off a couple of chunks of butter because what you're gonna be doing is the bottom of these pans are gonna be really, really buttery and brown sugary and maple syrupy, and it's gonna become kind of like this really thick, sugary, cinnamony mess. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna put some milk into the bottom, and you're gonna melt some butter, and you're gonna sprinkle a little bit of brown sugar on top. And what the milk and the butter is gonna do is the milk is gonna prevent the brown sugar from becoming like a hard, sticky candy, and so is the butter. So you're gonna kind of wanna make kind of like a runny candy with brown sugar at the bottom. So I do need to melt this butter because then we're gonna incorporate it with the milk and with the brown sugar, and it's just gonna kind of sit there until we're ready to put our dough in. 2.5 teaspoons. So it calls for 2.5 teaspoons. Now I buy yeast in these big jars, but if you buy them in those little packets, it's 2.25 teaspoons. So if you're off by a little bit, it's fine. Just put the whole packet in for each one of these recipes. You don't have to be, you don't need that extra 1/4 teaspoon. It'll be fine. Oh, my phone keeps turning off on me. This is annoying. Okay, sugar, 1 tablespoon of sugar per recipe. So, I just set my timer on for 10 minutes, so this is just gonna sit over here And we're gonna get everything else ready. I think I might just do a separate pan for my kid's teacher so that she can take it home to her family. Yeah. All right. So I'm just gonna do a tiny little pan. She's got a little 4-year-old. I think she's got an older kid. I don't know. But in case she doesn't, or in case she does, we're just gonna give her 4 cinnamon buns just to cover our bases. While that's figuring itself out, we're gonna get together all of our bread. I like mixing all of my dry ingredients and then throwing it into here. So I'm kind of mimicking how I make bread with this. We got our dry ingredient bowl here, and I need, okay. So you're gonna be needing the Jell-O instant pudding. You can use the knockoff stuff. This was actually on sale, so I grabbed the like name brand stuff. But with this, you don't have to be exact. So in here, it says half a box of vanilla pudding, and that's based off a 3-ounce box. So 3 ounces is roughly, I think it was like 80 or 85 grams. This is 102 grams for this box. It's fine. I'm gonna be a little bit over. You'll be fine with this. So because we're doing we're doubling the recipe, I'm just gonna throw this whole thing in. And I need 4 cups, so I really need 8 cups of flour. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, milk we've gotten, eggs we've gotten, butter is in there, water is in there, pudding is here, flour is here, sugar is there, salt is out, yeast is here. All right, now we just gotta combine everything. All right, so while we wait for that, we are gonna go take these out of the container because I just bought them at the store and they're still pretty cold. So I'm gonna go set them over there. I've got 2 chairs already sitting by my fireplace. So I'm just gonna put them like this. I'm gonna put them on a plate in case they start sweating or melting or whatever. I don't want them to melt all over my chairs and then on the floor. And my dogs are really, really good at not eating anything off the chairs. So if you have dogs that eat everything, I would not suggest this, but my dogs are pretty well behaved. At the bottom of the pans, I have the pumpkin seed milk, I've got maple syrup, I've got a little bit of brown sugar, and I'm just adding the melted butter to this. And I like doing this while I'm waiting for my dough to rise before I add the flour. You know, cut corners wherever you can to make it as fast as possible. And this is okay to sit because you're gonna put the dough, once you've cut up all your cinnamon pieces, this is gonna sit, your cinnamon buns are gonna be sitting on top of this mixture. And when you flip it over, essentially, all this is gonna drizzle nicely over top of your cinnamon buns. So they're gonna be so moist and wet from this brown sugary maple syrup mixture. And then what you're gonna do is you're just gonna end up drizzling the icing over top of it, and it is so absolutely delicious. So I like doing this at the beginning. Your butter is eventually gonna solidify, and that's okay because once it melts in the oven, it'll all incorporate nicely together. Alrighty. Oh, it's so pretty. Let me show you what this looks like. Look at that gloriousness. So that is healthy yeast right there. Okay, so now we're gonna put our dough hook on. And then we're gonna lift this guy up. And then we're gonna slowly incorporate this Because the last thing that you want to do is make scrambled eggs. And I just have it on stir, which is the lowest setting on my mixer. Milk is in here, egg is in here, butter and water in here, instant pudding, bread flour, sugar, salt, scrapped it, yeast is in here. We're ready to mix. Now before I do that, I want to give this a whirl because I've got my instant pudding sitting on top and I want to make sure that everything is nicely incorporated. You don't want to add it in too quickly because I've done that before where I've been in a rush, and even like with my pizza dough recipe, which is in the playlist as well, and you end up getting these crazy layers that just never ever blend themselves together. So if you're in a rush, just don't be. You cannot be in a rush when you're adding this flour in because it'll just be a horrendous mess. You'll end up starting over. Oh, take it from me, learn from me. Learn from my mistakes. It's not worth it. I'm just trying to get the stuff off the bottom to clump into one beautiful ball, and I'm going to set the timer on for 4 minutes. So I'm just making this into a nice big log so I can then kind of split it up in roughly make sure this is, you don't need a crazy amount of flour for this. But what you're trying to achieve is a nice rectangular shape, and let the dough tell you kind of what shape it wants to be so you don't force it. If you guys have wondered where I got this rolling pin from, it's actually from Home Depot. So if you go into the lumber area, this is actually a dowel. It's the biggest dowel that I could find, and all I did was I took my handsaw and I figured I wanted this width, and I actually have 2 of these, which is great because if the kids ever want to roll stuff out with me, you know, cookies or whatnot, then it's nice because I've got 2 of them. I think the entire piece was about 4 or 5 feet, which is awesome. I cut it in half and then I just sanded the corners just so I could make sure that I wouldn't have any wood chips in there. And that was it. And I think it only cost like maybe just a couple dollars. It wasn't very expensive at all. And if you think about all the, you know, rolling pins out there, and I used to have like a really expensive one and the thing ended up falling apart. I've started using these wooden dowels as rolling pins, and I much more prefer them this way than any other kind of way, and I think it's fantastic. So what I'm doing here is I just softened butter a little bit. If you melt butter completely to a liquid, it's not going to work. For whatever reason, the dough just doesn't work. You have to use softened butter. So keep it in the microwave if you've just pulled it out of the fridge, but don't completely liquefy it. Just get it nice and soft, just so you can get your butter spread out on this. I like using the back of a spoon because I find with a knife, it's really hard to get that angle with your arm in the way. Whereas if you have a spoon and you're using the back of the spoon to smear your butter, just the angle of the spoon makes it so much easier to do this task. And then as far as brown sugar and cinnamon go, just use whatever you think your family would like. I didn't go really heavy on the cinnamon because this is mostly for the teachers and the staff at my kids' school. But normally for my family, I cake on the cinnamon big time. We are huge cinnamon lovers in this family. So I definitely cake that on. And I put a good douse of brown sugar on there, and I'm just kind of mixing it between my thumb and my fingers and sprinkling it on that way. When you first start rolling your cinnamon bun, try and get it as tight as absolutely possible because it's not sticky, so it doesn't naturally want to stick to itself. If it was dough to dough, you'd have no problem, but because you've got all of these things going on, there's really nothing for it to stick. So especially the very ends, those are going to want to kind of peel away from themselves. So just really get it as tight as possible. Obviously, it's going to grow quite a bit once it starts plumping up. So you don't have to do like a crazy amount. Which is fine, but try and get as tight as possible. And over here, what I like to do is I like to use the tip of my finger just to figure out how many cinnamon rolls I can get out of this log. And I find if I use the side of my finger versus like the side of a knife or a fork, it's a lot easier to just kind of smooth out those little dents, and they don't appear as much when you go to bake. I found that in the past when I've done this, if I've used like say like a butter knife or anything like that, the dents always shows, but when I use the side of my finger, I have no problem with it disappearing, which is awesome. And it looks more professional, even though I'm far from it. So over here, I've got my finger kind of dents and I'm using that as a gauge. If you want to completely avoid kind of reshaping the cinnamon buns after, it's not a huge deal. Like once they plump up, they'll be nice circular shaped. But what you can do is you can actually get a piece of thread underneath the log and then almost as if you're tying your shoe, except you're not going to put the thread through the loop. You're just going to kind of cross them and then bring them together, and the thread from the bottom is going to lift up and you're going to get a nice slice, and it's not going to really squish the cinnamon buns as much, but nobody's perfect. And my cinnamon buns always come out great anyways, so I never worry about using this stainless steel. I call it my chopper. I don't actually know what this thing is called. It took me forever to find online. The cinnamon buns are in the oven right now, and I have 5 minutes to get these things out of the oven when they're done cooking or baking, and to get them into the truck. My husband's gonna help me, so thank goodness for that. And then run down to the school to be there for 11:30. So I'm gonna show you guys what they look so far. Oh, they're so yummy. There's still 13 minutes left in the oven to bake, but they're, oh, so poofy, so yummy, so delicious. I ended up making, just from the nubs off the side, 5 or maybe 6 for my family for tonight, which is awesome because they're nice and little and we're really trying to watch our sugar. And it's Valentine's Day. It's a write-off. It's a celebration of love. Anyways, whether you believe in Valentine's Day or think it's a Hallmark holiday or a cash grab day, whatever, I hope you had an amazing Valentine's Day. Hopefully this video will be able to come up tonight so you can enjoy it. And until next time, make sure you guys have some fun in the kitchen. Hit that like button, click subscribe. I can't wait to see you guys again in the next episode. Bye guys.